a tremendous tariff on lumber and things as such, and yet we don't need their lumber. We have more lumber than they do. We don't need Canada's lumber.
Let's be clear. Canada does not dump lumber into the United States. And we will continue to make the case that these current and proposed duties are unjustified.
What we expect is that we just see price increases in the U.S. And so they can, provide a little bit more lumber within their supply, but there's no way that they can replace the imports coming from Canada.
It began not with a formal declaration, but with a line that echoed like a warning across the economic landscape. We don't need Canada's lumber. At first, many dismissed it as another bold Trump remark meant for headlines, not policy. But within weeks, those words became reality. Washington moved forward with a sweeping national security tariff on imported lumber, targeting Canada, the very backbone of America's construction supply. Almost overnight, the housing market began to shake. What few realized was that 1/3 of America's lumber comes from abroad, and more than 85% of that supply flows directly from Canada. In one move, the White House had taxed the pipeline that literally builds America's homes. As the tariffs reached nearly 45%, the highest in decades, lumber prices went vertical. Every new home suddenly cost $650 more per 1,000 square feet. And economists from Brookings and the National Association of Home Builders sounded the alarm. Even a $10,000 increase could shut millions of families out of homeownership. What began as a protectionist policy to save American jobs had turned into a nationwide inflation trigger. Carpenters, contractors, and first-time buyers all were caught in the crossfire. Ironically, the supposed target of the tariffs, Canada, wasn't crumbling. It was adapting, and fast. While Washington framed the move as an act of economic defense, Ottawa saw an opportunity for transformation. Rather than retaliate with tariffs of its own, Prime Minister Mark Carney unveiled a $1.2 billion Canadian initiative, a blueprint not to fight back, but to expand forward. The goal was clear: help softwood producers diversify, modernize, and strengthen their foothold in the global market. From British Columbia to Quebec, sawmills received funding to upgrade technology, improve logistics, and open doors to new trading partners in Europe and Asia. In other words, while the U.S. built walls, Canada was quietly building. As Canada poured resources into innovation, Washington's numbers began to falter. Data revealed a painful truth. Canada supplies about 12 billion board feet of softwood lumber to the U.S. each year, roughly 1/4 of American construction demand. Even if every U.S. mill ran at maximum capacity, the nation would still face a 3 billion board foot shortfall. And that's under ideal conditions. Labor shortages, outdated equipment, and aging infrastructure made domestic expansion nearly impossible in the short term. The result was predictable: higher prices, slower building, and shrinking affordability across the nation. Behind closed doors, Canadian officials described the shift as a golden moment, a rare chance to redefine their role in the global economy. Provinces like Alberta and British Columbia, once dependent on the U.S. market, began investing heavily in port infrastructure, processing plants, and trade alliances. From Vancouver to Prince Rupert, new shipping terminals symbolized more than exports. They represented independence. Canada's approach wasn't reactionary, it was visionary. The country was reinventing itself, not as America's lumberyard, but as a global leader in sustainable wood production. The results came fast. Canadian lumber exports surged to South Korea, Vietnam, India, Japan, and across Europe. Japan alone increased its imports by over 25% in 2024. While new trade agreements with Germany and South Korea fortified long-term partnerships, Ottawa's strategy of diversification was paying off. For the first time in decades, less than 90% of Canadian lumber was heading south, and the share continued to fall. Each shipment abroad carried a new message: Canada was open for business with the world. Meanwhile, across the border, the American housing sector was cracking under pressure. Costs soared, projects stalled, and families waited as dreams of homeownership slipped away. Builders in Texas, Florida, and Ohio halted work as materials became unaffordable. Lumber, once a symbol of American industry, had become a luxury item. The tariff meant to shield domestic mills only exposed their deeper weaknesses: outdated machinery, rising energy costs, and a workforce stretched thin. The America First policy had ironically left Americans paying the highest price. As the U.S. battled inflation, Canada's lumber giants, West Fraser, Canfor, and Interfor, seized the moment. Exports beyond North America rose by nearly 20% in 2025 alone, driven by the global demand for high-quality, low-carbon materials. Canadian companies began focusing on engineered wood, sustainable furniture, and carbon-efficient construction materials, redefining what lumber could mean in a climate-conscious world. The tariff that was meant to weaken them had instead turned them into global innovators. Back in the U.S., the consequences grew impossible to ignore. The National Association of Home Builders recorded that every 1% increase in lumber prices adds $1,000 to the cost of a new home. With lumber hovering near $765 per 1,000 board feet, the average home cost over $10,000 more, with no improvement in quality or wages. Brookings' analysis was blunt. Lumber tariffs do not protect industry, they punish consumers. The wall of protection had become a wall of cost, dividing the American dream into those who could afford it and those who could not. What began as a trade dispute has now evolved into a transformation of global markets. Canada, once seen as America's junior partner, is now emerging as a supply chain superpower, diversified, resilient, and forward-looking. RBC forecasts that by 2027, Canada could become the largest lumber exporter outside Northern Europe. While Washington struggles to contain costs and rebuild capacity, Ottawa is shaping the future of sustainable trade.